In the bustling streets of Lagos, Nigeria, behind the walls of a modest apartment, lay secrets. Dark secrets that even the brightest city lights could not expose. This is the story of Nneoma, a woman who found her strength when the world around her tried to break her. Miss Nneoma stands on a balcony, her face solemn as she looks out over the city. Her hand gently rests on her pregnant belly. Behind her, the faint sound of laughter from her husband Alex echoes through the house, contrasting her sadness. Rachel arrives at Nneoma's house dressed in a vibrant Ankara dress. Rachel arrived at Miss Nneoma's house on Saturday morning, bearing a big smile and a bouquet of flowers. "Hey girl, I've missed you so much," she exclaimed, sweeping Miss Nneoma into a tight hug. Miss Nneoma smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. It had been ages since she'd had a friend over, and she was grateful for Rachel's company. The two friends spent the day lounging around the house, gossiping and laughing together. But as the afternoon wore on, Miss Nneoma's expression turned serious. "Rachel, I have to tell you something," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My marriage, it's been really hard. Alex has been controlling, possessive, and sometimes he can be really cruel." Rachel's eyes widened in shock. "Oh, Nneoma, I'm so sorry. Why didn't you tell me?" Miss Nneoma shrugged. "I don't know. I guess I was ashamed. I didn't want anyone to know how bad things were." Rachel reached out and took Miss Nneoma's hand. "You don't have to go through this alone, Nneoma. I'm here for you." Miss Nneoma took a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief wash over her as she began to open up to Rachel. "It's been going on since our wedding day," she said, her voice shaking. "At first it was just little things. He'd get angry if I didn't cook his favorite meal or if I didn't answer his calls right away. But then it started to escalate. He'd yell at me, call me names, and sometimes he'd even get physical." Rachel's eyes filled with tears as she listened to Miss Nneoma's story. "Oh, Nneoma, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "Why did you stay with him? Why didn't you call Dad or tell me?" Miss Nneoma shrugged. "I don't know. I guess I felt trapped. I didn't know how to leave or where to go. And a part of me kept thinking that things would get better, that he would change." Rachel nodded, her expression understanding. "You don't deserve this, Nneoma," she said. "You deserve so much better." "I must go talk to Alex." Before Miss Nneoma could say anything, Rachel rushed to go meet Alex in the room. Rachel stormed into Alex's room, her eyes blazing with anger. "Alex, you need to listen to me and listen good," she warned, her voice low and even. "Stay away from my sister-in-law. Stop stressing her out. She's pregnant, for goodness sake. She doesn't need your drama and abuse." Alex looked up from his phone, a smirk on his face. "Oh, what?" he sneered. "You do what, exactly?" Rachel's anger boiled over, and she took a step closer to Alex. "I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are," she hissed. "I'll make sure you regret ever laying a hand on Nneoma." Alex's smirk faltered for a moment, but then he laughed. "You think anyone will believe you?" he sneered. "No one will take your word over mine." Rachel's eyes flashed with determination. "We'll see about that," she said, turning on her heel and storming out of the room. Alex's face twisted in rage as he realized Rachel had been talking to Miss Nneoma about his behavior. After she left, he seized Miss Nneoma's phone, his fingers closing around it like a vice. "You think you can just betray me like this?" he snarled, his eyes blazing with fury. "You think you can just go behind my back and talk to my sister about our marriage?" Miss Nneoma tried to shake her head, but Alex's grip on her neck was too tight. He slapped her, the sound echoing through the room. Miss Nneoma's eyes widened in shock and pain as Alex pinned her against the wall, his fingers digging into her shoulders. "Listen to me and listen carefully," he hissed, his breath hot against her ear. "You will never betray me like this again. You will never talk to anyone about our marriage. Do you understand?" Miss Nneoma nodded, tears streaming. One fateful day, she went into labor and asked Alex to take her to the hospital, but he refused and stormed out of the house. As she struggled to get out of the house, the contractions grew stronger and more intense, leaving her breathless and dizzy. She stumbled and almost fell, but managed to grab onto the doorframe for support. With a Herculean effort, she made it out to the street, where she hailed a taxi with shaking hands. She collapsed onto the back seat, gasping for air as the contractions racked her body. The taxi driver, noticing her distress, asked if she was okay, but Miss Nneoma could only manage a weak nod. She closed her eyes, focusing on getting through the pain as the taxi sped toward the hospital. She tried to call Rachel, her hands shaking as she dialed the number. Rachel answered on the first ring, and Miss Nneoma's voice was barely above a whisper as she said, "Rachel, I'm at the hospital. I'm in labor." "Which hospital?" "St. Mary's General Hospital." She then hung up. The pain was too much, but she kept pushing. As soon as Rachel arrived, she rushed to the labor ward, her face etched with worry. She found Miss Nneoma, sweaty and exhausted, but relieved to see a friend. Rachel took her hand, speaking softly to calm her down. "I'm here, Nneoma. I've got you. You're going to be okay." Just then, the doctor came in to check on Miss Nneoma's progress, and Rachel stepped aside, watching anxiously as the medical team worked to bring the baby into the world. As the labor progressed, Miss Nneoma's contractions grew stronger and closer together. Rachel held her hand, coaching her through the pain and encouraging her to push. The medical team at St. Mary's General Hospital monitored the baby's heartbeat and Miss Nneoma's progress, offering words of reassurance and support. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the doctor announced, "It's time to push." Miss Nneoma took a deep breath, gathered all her strength, and began to push. Rachel cheered her on, urging her to keep going. With one final push, the baby emerged and the doctor held him up, exclaiming, "It's a boy!" The room erupted in cheers and tears as Miss Nneoma gazed lovingly at her newborn son. Rachel beamed with pride, snapping photos and congratulating her friend on the arrival of her beautiful baby boy. Rachel quickly pulled out her phone and dialed her dad's number, excitement radiating from her voice as she shared the news. "Dad, it's a boy! Nneoma just gave birth to a beautiful baby boy." Her dad's voice boomed through the phone, filled with joy and pride. "Praise God! I'm on my way to the hospital right now." Rachel could hear the sound of her dad's car engine roaring to life in the background. 20 minutes later, Rachel's dad burst through the hospital doors, a huge smile on his face. "Where's my grandbaby?" he exclaimed, his eyes shining with excitement. Rachel led him to the maternity ward, where Miss Nneoma was cradling her newborn son in her arms. As Rachel's dad entered the hospital room, his eyes widened with joy at the sight of his new grandson. He rushed over to Miss Nneoma, beaming with pride, gently took the baby from her arms. "He's perfect!" he exclaimed, tears of happiness welling up in his eyes. After a few moments of cuddling his grandson, Rachel's dad turned to Miss Nneoma with a mischievous grin. I have a surprise for you, he said, pulling out a small box from his pocket. Congratulations, my dear. You're not only a new mom, but also a new employee. Miss Nneoma's eyes widened in shock as Rachel's dad handed her a set of car keys and a job offer letter from his company. I want you to have this car and I want you to come work with me, he said, his voice filled with warmth. You're part of the family now, and I want to take care of you and my grandson. Miss Nneoma was overwhelmed with emotion as she hugged Rachel's dad, tears of gratitude streaming down her face. Thank you, she whispered, her voice trembling with joy. Thank you so much, she said, her voice filled with gratitude as she looked up at Rachel's dad. This means the world to me. Rachel's dad smiled warmly and patted her hand. You're part of the family now, Nneoma. We take care of our own. After a few more minutes of basking in the joy of the moment, the nurse came in to inform Miss Nneoma that she was cleared to go home. Rachel helped her gather her belongings, and soon they were all heading out of the hospital. As they left the hospital, Rachel's dad drove Miss Nneoma and the baby back to her house. Along the way, Miss Nneoma couldn't stop smiling as she gazed at her baby and thought about the wonderful surprise she'd just received. When they arrived at the house, Rachel's dad helped Miss Nneoma get settled in. Then he turned to Rachel and said, I want you to stay here with Nneoma and the baby until her mother arrives. Can you do that for me, sweetie? Rachel nodded eagerly, happy to spend time with her new brother and help out Miss Nneoma. Miss Nneoma smiled gratefully at Rachel's dad, feeling thankful for his thoughtfulness and support. Just then, the door swung open and Alex walked into the room, looking a bit disheveled. His eyes scanned the space, taking in the happy scene before him. His dad, Rachel, Miss Nneoma, and the baby were all smiling and chatting, clearly enjoying each other's company. Alex's dad caught his eye and beckoned him over. Alex, come here for a minute, he said, his tone stern. Alex ambled over, looking sheepish. Hey, Dad, he said, trying to sound nonchalant. His dad looked at him expectantly. I was expecting you to visit us at the hospital today, he said, his voice tinged with disappointment. Why didn't you come? Alex shifted uncomfortably, trying to come up with a believable excuse. I didn't know you guys were at the hospital, he said, attempting to sound innocent. But his dad wasn't buying it. He raised an eyebrow, his expression skeptical. Don't lie to me, Alex, he said firmly. I know you knew about the baby. Rachel told me she called you. Alex looked down, caught red-handed. His dad's expression softened slightly, but his tone remained serious. Listen, Alex, I don't want to lecture you right now, but I do want to remind you that you have a responsibility to take care of Miss Nneoma and your child. They need you, and I expect you to step up, he yelled. Just then, the door burst open and Miss Nneoma's mother walked in, beaming with joy. She was jumping and singing, her eyes shining with happiness. Oh, my precious grandchild, she exclaimed, rushing over to Miss Nneoma and scooping up the baby in her arms. She held the baby close, dancing and swaying to an unheard rhythm. Akachukwu diri Chineke, she sang in the native Igbo language, praising God for the gift of her grandchild. Onye dika chi anyị, who is like our God. The room was filled with the sound of her joyful singing and laughter, and everyone couldn't help but smile and join in the celebration. Miss Nneoma was laughing and crying tears of joy, happy to see a mother so overjoyed. Miss Nneoma's mother, still beaming with joy, turned to greet Alex's dad. Na ndewo, "Father, good day," she said, apologizing for not greeting him sooner. Alex's dad smiled warmly and replied, "Dewo, Mama. Congratulations on the new grandchild." They exchanged pleasantries for a few minutes, discussing the baby's birth and Miss Nneoma's health. After a while, Alex's dad stood up to leave. "I'll let you all get some rest," he said, smiling at Miss Nneoma and her mother. "Take care of yourselves and the baby." With that, he bid everyone farewell and headed out the door, leaving them to enjoy their time together. The moral of this story is that allow room for reconciliation and forgiveness. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and comment, like and share.